They thought they were towing away an old man's broken-down boat. But what they didn't know was that her hull number hadn't been seen since a classified mission in 1968. By the time 6 Navy officers showed up at the marina, it was too late. The sea had already called her home. Some boats were built to float, others were built to fight. But only a rare few were built to carry memory. Iron Lily was one of those. She didn't shine like the fiberglass yachts in the next slip. Her paint had worn thin along the rails, and the brass on her compass was pitted from decades of salt. But to Bill Ramsey, she was sacred. Every bolt, every board, every square inch of her hull held the sound of voices long gone. Bill was a Navy man, not the kind who told stories in bars or wore medals at parades. He'd served 30 years and kept quiet about most of it. When asked, he'd just say, "Did my job." Came home. After retiring, he found the battered frame of a 1940s Navy harbor cutter in a salvage lot outside Charleston. She was half sunk, stripped of parts, and forgotten. Most saw scrap. Bill saw her name, Iron Lily, still etched on the transom. It was a name he hadn't heard since 1968. He never said why she mattered. Not really, only that she had unfinished business. For nearly a decade, Bill worked on her. Quietly, patiently, plank by plank. He didn't cut corners, he didn't rush. Every repair was made by hand, every rivet sealed with care. Some folks offered to help, he thanked them but declined. "Got to do it right," he'd say. "Or don't do it at all." By the time she hit the water again, Iron Lily looked old but proud. She didn't gleam, but she stood steady. Bill docked her at Slip 14 in Carter's Wharf, a modest marina in a quiet coastal town where folks nodded good morning but didn't ask many questions. He took her out on Sundays, sometimes with his granddaughter, sometimes alone, always back before sundown. But peace like that never lasts, not in a world run by forms and people trying to prove themselves. It started with a letter from the State Harbor Authority. A newly hired official named Curtis Dunning had flagged Iron Lily for non-compliance, said her restoration lacked proper permits and her hull posed structural risks to adjacent vessels. Bill blinked at the notice. The man had never even seen the boat. Still, he tried to play it fair, filed paperwork, submitted photos, provided the name of the engineer who'd certified her seaworthy the year before. It wasn't enough. 2 weeks later, a tow crew arrived with state-issued orders. The marina owner, a friend of Bill's, said he couldn't stop them. They pulled Iron Lily from her slip without Bill aboard. Didn't even let him power her down. Bill stood by the dock, arms folded, lips tight. He didn't raise his voice, didn't curse. He just watched her go, eyes locked on the water, until the ripple of her wake faded into stillness. Then he sat down on the bench he'd built from reclaimed mahogany, took off his cap, and said nothing for a very long time. The town didn't know what to do with the silence. Some folks thought he should just build another. Others figured he'd done something wrong and wouldn't say. A few tried to stop by, offer coffee or comfort. Bill always nodded, but he never invited anyone to sit. His granddaughter, Ellie, was the only one who stayed. She brought her mic and recording gear, said she was doing an episode for her podcast. He wasn't one for interviews, but that day he agreed. She called the episode "The Boat That Served Twice." In it, she told the world what Bill never had, about the cutter's role in the Pacific escort convoys, about the classified mission off the coast of Havana in '68, when 5 lives were saved because Iron Lily made it through a blockade no one knew existed. She told how Bill, then Chief Ramsey, had taken over when the CO collapsed, steering the damaged boat with a broken arm and 12 hours of fuel left. She even read from his old journal. Her voice cracked halfway through. That night, the episode reached 40,000 plays. Then for 100,000 by morning, someone had recognized Iron Lily's whole number. An admiral, retired but still respected, called Ellie personally. That boat never got decommissioned. He said, "She vanished from the rolls after that rescue mission. Some of us thought she'd been scrapped, others knew better." He made a call, then another. A paper trail long buried began to rise from the deep. Turns out, Iron Lily was still listed as archival property, technically under the Naval Heritage Division. And more importantly, she was one of only 3 cutters of her class still accounted for. Her hull number had been removed from public files during the Cold War, her existence buried under a stack of redacted documents and eyes-only footnotes. But now, the right eyes had seen. 3 days after the podcast aired, Bill was sitting at the dock like always, sipping from the same battered thermos. The wind was sharp, the clouds heavy. And then he heard attentions, low and familiar, but not from a skiff or tour boat. These were deeper, thicker, purposeful. He looked up as a black SUV parked across the marina. 3 men stepped out, to a Navy dress whites, one in a Federal blazer. They walked straight to Bill. The youngest saluted. "Master Chief Ramsey," he said. "On behalf of the Department of the Navy, we're here to return what was never meant to be taken. Behind them, a flatbed rolled into view, Iron Lily resting on her trailer, secure and upright. But she was different now. Her nameplate had been polished, her hull carefully cleaned, and in her bow rested a framed document, a letter from the Secretary of the Navy, recognizing her continued preservation of United States naval history. Bill said nothing. He just stepped forward, placed a hand on her bow, and bowed his head. Across the harbor, Curtis Dunning was being served a legal notice. His violation of federal restoration protection laws had sparked a formal investigation. He resigned 2 days later without comment. The town turned quiet, respectfully quiet. The mayor issued a statement, but it was unnecessary. The people had already spoken in their own way. The marina put up a new sign over Slip 14, reserved, U.S. Naval Archive vessel. Iron Lily veterans from nearby counties began arriving. Some brought their children, some brought scrap metal or tools. A boat builder offered to retrofit Iron Lily's cabin free of charge. The VFW announced a scholarship fund in her name. Ellie's podcast went national, but Bill just went back to sanding the rails. When someone asked why he didn't put the boat in a museum, he gave them that old half smile and said, "She's not done floating yet." He started something called Boats and Basics, a weekend mentorship program for teenagers. Not just to teach knots and navigation, but to teach care, discipline, patience. You treat the water right, he told one boy, and it might just carry you through. The town council passed a new ordinance protecting restored military vessels as historical landmarks. A brass plaque was installed beside Iron Lily's slip. It didn't say much, just Bill's name, her hull number, and the phrase, "The sea remembers its own." Bill never sought attention, never stood in front of a crowd, but that didn't matter because the tide had already turned. People understood. That boat wasn't just wood and steel, she was service, she was memory. She was proof that sometimes, even when the world forgets, the sea does not.